Welcome to the Body, Soul, and Spirit podcast. Excited to be with you guys today as we navigate through all the emotions during the holiday season. And I want to talk to you about faith. You know, it's important for us to be healthy mentally, spiritually, physically. That is really key for our well-being, for our growth and our maturity, and for us to be able to be people that are whole, complete, lacking nothing broken and nothing missing. And we talked about in our previous podcast about inviting God into the emotion. See, faith is different than self-help. And there are practical things that we can do, as I've shared some on these podcasts. Self-help has tools to help you, and that is necessary. It's the backdrop, right, of living in this body and the soul. But when you have self-help, which is what we do here as far as mental health is concerned, when you have that and it's infused with God's presence, inviting God in a daily moment, there's a daily connection, it will always lead us forward. It will always lead us to freedom. It always leads us to healing. It helps us find purpose, even out of that pain. When we do not invite God, or we don't practice the presence of God and God's power on a daily basis and invite Him into those areas in our life that demand healing, that are needing, and it's demanding compassion, it's demanding healing in our lives, what ends up happening is that we cannot find purpose in the pain. So we get stuck. We can't move forward. Have you ever seen in the computer that little circle when things are trying to buffer, or it can't find a connection on the internet and it just buffers, and you see this little circle in the computer just going around and around, or your phone does that and it's waiting. You know, you'll be on a YouTube and nothing happens. The music stops and it's just this circle going around and around. That's what happens when we try to just use self-help. Self-help is not bad. There's tools. But when you invite God and you invite His power, you invite His presence into that place that demands healing, then you find purpose in that pain. You find purpose and you find hope where you are hurting the most. Oftentimes, there's a lot of emotions that rise, like guilt, especially after a loss, or you find yourself with some form of PTSD where you're looking back and these memories are so intrusive and it's almost like a slideshow. You can't get it out of your mind. What happened in the past, these memories maybe start haunting you, and subconsciously you're trying to make sense of it, but these images you can't seem to get out of your head. That's called flashable memories. And what the brain does is the brain actually takes a photograph picture of these moments that have been extreme, that have their severity moments in our lives where they're traumatic, and the brain actually captures a image. And now your brain is trying to make sense of it. It's trying to solve problems because our brains function in a way where it has a way of trying to solve the problem. But when it can't solve the problem, we can't make sense of what happened. We can't understand why this happened in our lives, and we can't solve it. So what happens is it starts to get out of control. And it's important for us to find God in that situation. Invite Him into every memory. Invite Him to every intrusive thought, to every intrusive image that you can't get out of your head. When you do that, then you can find some sense. You may not know the why you went through it, but now you can find purpose in pain. That's actually the journey, to find purpose in all our pain. When we don't invite God, we turn to numbing behaviors. We'll start to numb it with drugs. We'll start to numb it with alcohol. We start to numb it with controlling. We become perfectionists. We try to control issues. We become, or at least try to become, very successful in certain areas because we are just trying to survive. Or we start to shame ourselves. And sometimes, and it's happened to me, when you find some sense of hope after a trauma, you find some sense of hope, and you almost feel like, okay, I'm going to make it out of this. But all of a sudden, something triggers and it takes you back into this intrusive memory again, this image again, moments of hope. And then all of a sudden it takes you back. You feel normal, but then you start to go back into this place and you start to play that slideshow again. It repeats itself again and again and again. It might lead you to depression. It might lead you to self-pity. It might be crying uncontrollably, etc., etc. That's why it's so important for us to be very aware of what's going on. It's so important for us to invite the presence of God on a daily basis, because sometimes there's such intruders that come into these memories. There are intruders that come into our thinking, and we start to lose the war in our minds. And when you invite God, it allows us to be empowered by what we've been through. God's power and God's presence, as we invite God, as we talked about in our last podcast, invite God into those memories. God, I feel. God, I'm not well today. God, I feel depressed. And when you start to invite God, you can make some sense, and you now get on this journey of finding purpose. Now I understand why I went through that. It's now making some sense. I don't know why I went through it. I don't have all the answers, but I'm starting to understand in retrospect, looking back, that it took me on this journey of maybe maturing. Now I understand why I went through this. There's some sense of purpose to it. So it's important. If you're going to find purpose in all your pain, you must invite God and His presence, and practice His presence daily by inviting Him into the deepest places in our lives that demand so much compassion, so much freedom, and so much love.